Hi there, and welcome to How To with Ann Mahlum. When deciding to do this podcast, I really wanted to create something that could give people real tools on how to execute on certain things. So often we talk about things on such a macro scale that, yes, leaves people inspired, but with no real idea on what the steps are to make something in their own life happen. I challenge and encourage and probe my amazing guests to get granular and specific on their strategies, their mindset, their tactics, and their methodologies so that you can learn practical, actionable steps to best optimize your confidence, career, health, and wealth. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the How To podcast with Ann Mahlum. I am thrilled to have Shizu Okusa here today. Her how-to is how to be a human being, not a human doing. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Shizu is the founder and CEO of Apothékary, a plant-based pharmacy that couples traditional medicine with modern-day ailments, offering natural alternatives to over-the-counter drugs and beauty products. The company was established in 2020 and has since expanded globally, doing over $20 million in revenue. Shizu started her entrepreneurial journey in the health and wellness industry 8 years ago with her first company, JRINK. She launched and bootstrapped the cold-pressed juice brand in 2013 and since scaled and ultimately sold the company to a strategic buyer in 2019. Go Shizu. On this side, she also angel invests in mostly female-led companies with a portfolio of 10 companies to date, including Cadence, Fishwife, Trust Software, Behave, Formula Fig, and more. Shizu, thanks for being here. It's so nice to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you, and big fan. And it's amazing because we're both DC and full circle. So
Yeah, totally. For those who don't know, Shizu and I spent some time in DC while she was building her first company and I was building SolidCore. And since have relocated, you are in California now?
Yeah, I'm in LA. Are you in California too? I think so.
Today I am. Today I'm in San Diego, but I'm normally spending time in different places, North Dakota, and New York, mainly. But yeah, let's get right into it. First, if you can just tell our listeners a little bit about you, your journey, who you are, and why you chose this topic today.
Amazing. Yeah. So I was born and raised in Canada. I'm Canadian. So I was born and raised in Vancouver. I grew up with two, very traditional immigrant parents. My mom was from Osaka. My dad was from Tokyo. My dad's a milk farmer with cows. And that's how he kind of moved here. And he always tells me he failed out of college. And I'm like, I don't know why you keep telling me this, but he always tells me to stay grounded, My mom was a photographer and they kind of met in Vancouver. And I share that because it's so representative, I think, of how entrepreneurs, especially immigrant entrepreneurs, get raised. And I think, and we'll talk a little bit probably about this a little bit later, but, my parents raised me to come into this world with a very stable mindset, be an accountant, be a doctor, be a finance person, all those things.
Security,
and I did.
Security.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what they knew at the time, right? And so I pursued finance, and then I worked at Goldman Sachs for my first job. So I graduated at UBC in Vancouver. I moved to New York. I managed to find a Canadian person on the desk at Goldman that I wanted to work at. His name was Ted Goldthorpe, still really great friends to this day. Just cold emailed him and said, look, I'm flying to New York. I did not have a ticket at the time. Flying to New York. I want to meet you. I have an investment thesis and a pitch idea and I want to share it. And he took a 10-minute meeting with me and it turned out to become a 9-hour interview session. And this was 2009, summer of 2009. So it was really kind of coming out of the financial crisis. And, I share this story because I think it's so important that cold emails work, if you put thought into it as to do the research, do the motions. But that really was the opening, I think, to my journey into entrepreneurship, because I don't think I would be the entrepreneur today if I didn't have my training at Goldman Sachs for about 3 years. So I worked there for 3 years on the trading desk, doing special situations, investing in distressed debt, fulcrum equity turnarounds and retail, and was the lead trader there for equity debt, high yield, bank debt, and options and default swaps and all that. So, but, I think that world was great, but I quickly realized I didn't want to build my life around eulogy or resume virtues only. And I really wanted to be more thoughtful around this concept of eulogy virtues and that we're all going to die one day. And by keeping death at the forefront, and I had a lot of death growing up in my family, and it kept me in tune with I want to be living for my best life, knowing that we all are going to die one day. So I realized I didn't want to work on Wall Street anymore. and I just quit and I moved to Mozambique. I lived in Africa for about a year and a half, and I knew nobody. And like, this was great because at the time, I had phones, like we were just talking about this. There was no Wi-Fi. There was like dial-up internet where you pick up the phone and it breaks the Wi-Fi, right? And so it was that moment where I lived there for about 16 months and just like was living in Mozambique for a company called TechnoServe. It was a nonprofit that connects business people with entrepreneurs and farmers and helps them raise capital for their plantations and smallhold farmer projects. And granted, I look back, I think I probably got more out of that experience than I was able to give back at the time, but it was the hard reset. And I think those are really important for your life because it allows you to kind of start from 0 to 10 again versus going from 5 to 6. It's often harder to pivot. But that was really the opening experience to then move back to DC after that period of time. And I moved it to DC and I was working at the World Bank for like 2 months. And on the side started JRINK as like a cold press solution to my sort of pressed life of just living this sort of corporate world life again. I didn't love it. And juice was sort of like a nutritional way to stay healthy when pressed for time. Yeah. So that was really kind of the foray of starting my first company.
That's amazing. I have never lived overseas, and that's something I've always wanted to do. It's always finding this balance between like adventure and go and building community. I've always sort of struggled with which one to do. And I feel like my natural talents are around, building community wherever I am, whether that's through a volleyball network or solid core or back on my feet. And I'm a little envious of that. I'm like, man, it would just be amazing to just be like, I am gone for the next year and I'm just going to go experience and I'm going to go be. And you learn so much by witnessing other cultures and the way that other people live. And you're making me feel like I need to, I want to be making more time. Of course. Yeah, of course. And I think too, Shizu, when you talk about death, I recently read this book. I've talked about a couple of the podcasts I've been on, Die with Zero. Have you heard about this book?
No, I actually haven't. No.
You're going to love it because it's all around, Bill Perkins is who wrote it. And it's just all around balancing your health, your wealth, and your time. And how when we're choosing to do things, is this thing that you're talking about doing that you say you really want to do and you keep kicking it down the road because you've got to work or you've got to this, and all of a sudden, this wanting to go climb Kilimanjaro passed you by and you're now in your 60s and it's just going to be less enjoyable and less fun and a different experience than you've had before. But there's so much, again, what we were talking about of just this chasing of more and more and more, and it is endless. And if you are chasing the more, you're never going to feel satisfied. You're never going to feel good enough. You're never going to feel successful enough. And you're never going to get in this place of enjoyment. One of my good friends said to me, and it's always stuck with me, he was at a hotel, really nice hotel that he had worked, hard for, and like being able to stay at this place. And in his mind, he goes, oh, I can't wait till I really make it. And then I'm going to be at this kind of hotel. And it was missing everything in front of him. And if we keep playing that dangerous game, which I think is a lot to do with the human doing, and miss so much of your life.
It's so true. It's not celebrated enough too, or it's not emphasized enough to just be here now, right? And we're always planning for the next thing, the next job, the next relationship, the next thing. And it's like, let's just stop trading up. We're great as we are. And that's, I think, something that I've been working on as well. And I think a lot of us are coming around to that. And this whole idea of like rising feminism is like a whole nother separate issue and topic, right? Of like the movements that have changed in our conversations around what it's like to be a woman. And as a woman in entrepreneurship in particular, there's just so many more different elements and conversations going around.
Well, for those of you who are listening, we're going to take a quick detour because I want to talk about this real quick, and then we're going to get into the human doing, because Shizu and I are both entrepreneurs. We both raise money in different capacities. And I would like you to elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by that, of for you, what it is like being a female entrepreneur. And I watch your stories a lot on this stuff too. And I think it's more specifically around how entrepreneurship on this journey is so often at a standstill with like who we naturally are as women. I grew up in a family that was very traditional. I was taught to be more quiet, not speak up. To say what I want is often considered
like I would be paying for somebody else, or there was like always like a zero-sum game. And I think the work that I'm doing now is how can I be a strong leader, but also stay in my feminine? And it's really hard, and I sometimes feel like I overthink how am I being perceived when I should just be. But that's probably the biggest struggle over the last 2 or 3 years is like I'm now in my mid-30s and I love who I've become, but sometimes I feel like that, have I raised the bar too high in terms of like, now what do I expect out of a partner?
Right.
So there's that piece. And then the two is it's all facade. At the end of the day, it's all just like smokes and mirrors. It's like money is a thing. Great. Fine. LinkedIn's a thing. Whatever. What have we done in our life? Whatever. And I'm starting to come to this realization of like, we're all just people. We're all doing the work and we're all doing it in different ways. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to box myself up in just being the entrepreneur now. Like I'm starting to seek friendships and relationships outside of being a founder. I started singing lessons. I started playing piano again. Like the things that encourage joy for just the sake of being joy and being in my feminine is like a lot of the work that I'm doing outside of my work hours, which, to be honest, as I'm sure it's never defined. And so I think that's probably the work. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, we are on a very similar path right now, which is I've gone through therapy to really talk about my feminine energy. And listen, again, anybody out there, you don't have to be a female entrepreneur to understand what Shizu and I are talking about. If you are killing it in your career or trying to, you find yourself stepping into your masculine because those are the traits that get rewarded in the business and professional world, right? Being assertive, being dominant, going for what you want, being demanding, having clear vision. All of these things are masculine traits, not male traits, but masculine traits. And, you really, in my perspective, until the feminine traits start to get celebrated in the business world, which is more collaborative, more democratic, women are going to continue to step into their masculine because we're like, oh, I want that. I want the corner office. I want the big paycheck. I want the private equity dollars. And if you're telling me that less than 3% of private equity dollars are still going to females, you're telling me how I need to be. You're telling me how I need to show up. So I did the same thing. I'm like, the kind of people, especially from an intimate partner perspective that I'm attracting, end up, and it was a combination of both. And I learned to take responsibility. I wasn't creating a space for anybody to step into their masculine. I was always in it because that's what I was good at. That's what I knew how to do. And I sort of expected the people around me to accept that, like that's, and so of course I'm not going to make space for a masculine partner, which is frankly what I want. And everybody should get clear on that for themselves. But I wanted somebody that I felt protected by, that I felt safe around.
Great.
And I didn't want somebody where I felt I had to take control all the time, make the decisions, plan everything, handle the conflict. If we're not, if we're at a restaurant and, the server isn't recognizing us, I don't want to feel like I'm not the one who go, excuse me, can we get some service? It's little small things like that.
It's so the small things, opening the door. Like we like that.
Yeah.
But we also need to make it safe for them, I guess, right? Because
and they need to make it safe on the other end to feel like when you find the right person, and fortunately, after 42 years, I have, my femininity or my masculinity isn't at threat around my current partner, right? He makes me feel amazing in my feminine. It's not going to get taken advantage of, like I don't have to step into my masculine because he shows me that he can handle that for the both of us, and that I want him to do, the masculine things, the handling stuff, the be assertive, the make me a priority in regard to feeling safe and feeling desired and feeling all of that stuff. So I totally hear you, Shizu, and I can now feel when I'm in my masculine on phone calls, I'm like, ew, I don't want to be there anymore. Like I really don't. And I've put people in place where I don't want to feel like I have to raise my voice or be stern or scold or do any of those things. I've just done it for 15 years and I'm shedding that part of myself. And again, to speak about the being part, that is in essence the being I'm trying to step into. I think a lot of masculine, and again, I don't want to say that because there's a lot of female traits that are all about doing, right? Serving. Females are all about taking care of others and what can we do to support you and help you. And, that's the doing side of the feminine, and the masculine one is provide, protect, please in some regard, but like let me, especially financially. So it's a lot of work when you're living in this world that can be constantly full of juxtapositions. Live for today, plan for tomorrow. Like it's like, wait, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. And it's hard. Yeah. Like men are also fed different things and different things of what they should be doing too. So I feel like the dating world and just relationships has been really confusing for so many people.
Well, what's your take on again, from a human being perspective, are you one of these people who associate achievement with love?
No, I don't know. I think achievement for me was always acceptance. And I think mine was driven more of my childhood, like teenage years. Like I had like 4 or 5 best friends growing up, and I always go to the store, and I'm pretty open about it now, and I would refuse to talk about it before. But I was like going through high school bullying for a few years. And there was a moment where it was like out in the public and there was like 30 people watching me get like totally just beat into. And that's probably why I go to solid core so much, right? It's like, it's strength. And obviously at that moment, it was like, I'm not going to call the cops. I'm not going to do anything about it. I was 15 years old. But I look back as to that being the moment that turned my life around to be super ambitious. Like my way of showing up for myself at that time, then when I didn't show up for myself and no one showed up for me, was to become quote unquote successful. And I think the last 12, 13 years to drive that forward was driven in a way that was probably the stereotypical way of what achievement looks like. But now I'm like, I feel like I'm done. Not done, but like I feel so much more confident in who I am, say what I want, and almost just shed the past. Like I feel actually okay closing that side of my life now, and that's not driving my behavior. And that's taken work, and relationships that both broke or even that, that are here today. And I'm so grateful for the community that I have.
Yeah, I think, listen, anybody who makes it from that definition of a societal perspective, we're driven by something.
Yeah.
And I think, it's okay to have something to prove to yourself in that moment too, where you're like, I will take care of myself. I will be successful. We have these different moments where when we're in them, and when that happened, that must have been, horrendous and whatnot, but to reflect and be like, that was a defining, formative moment for me that really made me who I am, and I'm really glad it happened. I can think about all of the times, when I got my heart broken for the first time when I was 37, like I was in a complete disarray, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It led me to do all of the work, and even through back on my feet in solid core, Shizu was the same thing. I'm like, I've got something to prove here, to myself, to other people. And when you come out of that, and I don't think there's any other way to come out of it besides going through it. I am starting this next company now, but it's not frankly about me. I'm starting this next company because I want to help a bunch of people build their careers and wealth within this industry that you and I love so much, the fitness, health, and wellness industry. And I want to create structure and a brand that allows them to be able to shine, make big decisions. Of course they'll earn it all, but like I'm sitting in the background coaching where I was the quarterback in solid core. Like I was in it nonstop, and like I've got nothing to prove. This is more of my impact work of I want a lot of people to make a ton of money in this space. I want to provide a great product. And then I'm like, okay, cool. If I can do it here, then what can I do for other people to give them opportunity and coach them and guide them in a business construct where they can start to earn real dollars as well. It's really exciting.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I don't know if I'm being fully honest, if I'm quite there yet with Apothékary. I think I still have this visceral, I feel it in my bones. This is my parents are in the videos, right? Like this is so much of like a family, and maybe it's like the Asian roots of suppression for a long time and like wanting to bring this Eastern world to the West in a really beautiful and approachable and like I want to be a part of that way. And that's really where I think I want to kind of like leave my legacy a little bit more for the next. So I put a timeline of like 3 or 4 more years of like let's continue doing it, but I'm going to do different things. Like I've hired a coach, I've hired a therapist now. I'm part of YPO. I have investing in founders outside of this world so I can continue to be a whole human and not just the CEO of one company. Because at the end of the day, what you realize is like when shit hits the fan and things get really hard, those are the moments when you're like, what happens if this all goes away? Who am I? Who's going to be there for me? And like, who am I? And you start to kind of like question those things. And I think those are the moments of pure heartbreak and pure, like, you find yourself in those moments. I just had that like last week. So it's like, it's just like, it's so fresh. It's so tender.
Yeah. And it's, I am one of those people who've associated achievement with love for a long time. And I'm still working on it. I don't want to say I'm entirely healed, but I remember Shizu, in COVID when obviously that happened so fast, like there was no time to process. It was just like within a week, we were like, wait, what's going on? And I remember being on a boat. It was my first vacation after my accident, my jet ski accident. And I'm like sending Brian, Myers, my CEO, who I know you know, like, hey, I think we need to run some projections here. Like if the company takes a 50% hit. And he was like, that's ridiculous, Anne. Like enjoy your vacation. And then literally with 10 days of that text, we were completely shut down. And I remember thinking and telling my team, I'm like, there is no way we're not coming back from this. Like it was everything, Shizu. It was my whole identity. It was my self-worth, everything that I had built. And it was like, it's not an option. Like there's no way whatever this is because no one really knew is taking my company from me. And it was just this like wartime CEO, and we got a plan and executed, and it's just like, this isn't the way this ends. There's no way it will end on my terms. Like this will transition on my terms. And Solidcore is not gonna demise to the pandemic here. So anyway, I say that of just how important exactly of those things. And you feel, I mean, for us, right, our businesses are kind of our babies. If when we don't have kids yet, or if you're going to have kids, it is your identity. It is, everything is set up. You have used this thing to reputationally create for yourself and also provide jobs, provide experiences, your products that people love. Like there's a lot that we get out of it. That's really feeds the self-worth in my mind.
I agree. And also, I think part of the being and the doing is also when you're staying still in the noise of all of it, you quickly realize actually like you're in like 20 relationships in your company. And when we talk about mirrors when dating, right? We talk about like dating is like your relationship with a mirror to yourself, so you can see all the things that you need to work on, all the things that trigger you. I actually think startups and running your business is like, you have like how many other people having mirrors back on you? Like, who are you as a leader? How do you react when there's conflict? Are you the person reaching back out when there is conflict? Mm-hmm. How do you approach those conversations? Are you responding? Or are you replying? Like, and it has opened my eyes to become a better partner, I think, because of all the even though I may not have been in so many relationships, it's also, I can take what I've taken from this business and all the mirrors around me to show up better for all parts of people in my life. And I think that's part of the being process, right? It's like you're actually taking the experience and applying that to your life and not just continuing to do on top of that.
Yeah. So what does that mean to you when you're trying to be more of a human being? What does that mean? A human being, not a human doing. What's that mean to you?
I think it's softness, it's quietness, mm-hmm. It's not making things more complicated. I have this saying that I forget who I've shared this to. I feel like I've shared it a lot. It's like, you need to know there's easy things and there are hard things. Easy things are meant to be easy and hard things are meant to be hard. The challenge, though, is that we often complicate easy things for hard. And I think part of the being and the doing is also just like slowing down to know and be with whatever is happening in front of us and be with it like, okay, this is easy, this is hard. And when we're in constant doing mode, I think we take everything that's easy as hard. And that's when life gets really hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like a real world example, I think, of knowing when do you react? Versus just let it be.
Yeah, I think, and that's where the meditation. Do you meditate?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, everybody can talk about having their own version of meditation, of course.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten into a meditative practice, but I do feel I do a decent job of reading, getting massages, thinking, and I do feel that I found myself in this place because it can be exhausting. We were talking about earlier before we started recording here of the constant chase of just like, oh my God, it is never enough. It'll never be enough. There's always more to do. There's always more to do. Yeah. And Naval Ravikant, I read his book actually twice in the last 2 weeks here. And I think it's really brilliant about what it actually does mean to be present. And being present is just this acceptance of of what is happening today. And he gives this example of you've got two options with what is going on. You change it or accept it. And he says, the phrase I say to myself all the time is accept this. And when there's that struggle, right? This which pain multiplied by resistance is suffering. I love that.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah. And I don't ever get he said that, but we're all going to experience it. But if you don't process it and you just no, that's where, again, you constantly feel in this state where you're just stressed and you're working towards something, and where you are is never going to be good enough. And that just this notion of if it isn't good enough now, it's never going to be good enough for the most of us, right? And there are certain circumstances I know can be, extreme and exceptions to the rules. But if you're not enjoying today, what makes you think another, on a $5 million, it's going to be different? How is your life, your mood, your sense of self going to be different if that's what you're chasing? If you're chasing, when you lose 10 pounds, how is your sense of self, all of these things, going to be really that different? It's important things to think about.
Oh, I love that quote though. My God, that's a good one. That's really great.
Yeah. So if you feel you're in this place of acceptance, Shizu, today, with yourself, or is there any of that chase still going on?
Oh, I think there are parts of my life that I'm still going through some of the motions. I think in the business world, so let's just say the resume virtues, I have accepted where I am today. And, people can say one or the other things. Even if people actually tell me today, oh, you've done so much, you should be very proud, et cetera, et cetera. I actually still don't kind of feel that. But I also don't really have the urge to necessarily do more above and beyond. And I don't know if that's just more work I think I need to do on my personal side. So I think the world where I haven't yet quite accepted is probably, I spent 15 years working or building two businesses. And now at the point where I need to spend more time on myself and figure out what do I want in myself over the next 10 years? Where do I want to live? I've lived in 8 Airbnbs in 2022. I don't have a home. I have money and a company and all that, but I don't have a home.
Right.
And that's
and are you craving that?
Oh, I'm so craving that. I'm craving the juxtapositions of being an entrepreneur, which is stability. It's softness. It's comfort. It's all the things that I think I have neglected whilst being so focused on everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting how just, again, different phases. And I think you and I are alike there of, I love when my life changes, when I can feel and sense that about myself of this is actually, again, the feminine masculine energy. I can crave it. I can feel it. Or it's time for this. When I called up my prior engagement in September 2021, and I was like, see ya. Like I had just promoted Brian to CEO in April, and I was like, I went to be nomadic for the next 4 to 5 months. I didn't have a place either. And then once that was over, I was like, okay, now I'm craving home.
Yeah.
And, you know, we one of the biggest mistakes, or one of the biggest mistakes, are wrong word, but that I see people do where they regret, is when they make decisions, Shizu, they think like, well, they put so much stress on it. And I'm like, this isn't a permanent decision. If you end up moving to San Diego and after a year or however long you don't like it, you can move again. You don't live in a video game where you run out of quarters and like, you used your last decision. Sorry, you don't get another one. And it's just, it paralyzes people. They don't ever choose. It's like, well, what if I choose wrong? I'm like, well, you choose wrong, you move again. Like, you're never going to know. And the other piece that I think is really important to remember is there is more than one right answer.
Yeah.
You can be happy in 1,000 different places and know that. Otherwise, the analysis paralysis lets in and you never choose. And all of a sudden 2 years go by and a decision hasn't made. It's like choosing a movie on Netflix. It's like, oh my God. Like, we spent an hour looking for a movie. Pick one.
I mean, so I did good one though, but it's also like practice change. And, you know, I think if you make peace your priority, and that was my word for 2023. Like I don't do resolutions. I do one word. 2023 was inner peace. And anything outside of what brings me peace, I'm going to say no to now. It's peace.
Have you said no to some of those things already?
Yes. Mostly people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, keep going, but I want to come back to that.
No, I mean, it's really just knowing what gives you peace, of like, if you make that change or that decision, or what you're saying of like, even though it's scary, if you find more peace in that from where you are today, I think that's the right move. But again, you can always go back. Again, it's never permanent. But I think optimizing for that inner peace is really important, and only you can define that. You know, it's through your own experiences, through what you want.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome when those words change year to year. It means you're living, and it means you're growing, and it means that like you're not just accepting in some way of like, well, this is what it is. I said I was going to live this life, you know, and that's again goes back to the acceptance or the growth piece, or acceptance or the change piece. I have changed my mind so many times, and I'm like, I have new information. This is no longer what I want, or you know, and Shizu, God, goodness, again, as somebody, to people who aren't married, and I'm not against marriage.
Yeah.
But it's just like everything that doesn't last forever isn't a failure. There have been amazing relationships that I have had, that I have, you know, learned, and I wouldn't be who I am without them. They were supposed to have a 2 to 3, like they lasted 2 years or they lasted 6 months. Yeah. And like, that's all it was supposed to be. And it doesn't mean it's not it was a waste of time. Right. I think we look at it's like, where's my forever or something? I'm like, that can't be the only barometer of doing something or success or feeling happy or feeling good. But we also can't be afraid to change our damn mind.
I agree.
It's working.
I agree. And it's also the guilt and shame. Like, have you heard of the Tara Brach's concept of second arrows?
Mm-mm.
It's this idea of like, so she's this Buddhist meditation. She talks a lot on Buddhism and meditation. She hosts these weekly meditation Dharma talks. And this concept of second arrows, which I think is really representative of the society we live in, is like, there's the first arrow. So if something happens to you, let's say you get stressed out and someone pushes you against the wall emotionally and you don't know how to react, we go at them with like anger usually, right? Or like we curse, we do something. That's the first arrow. The second arrow is the one we shoot back at ourselves. And that's in the form of guilt or shame. And that's never productive, because it's like, you're just like, you shoot yourself and you're just like guilty, you're in pain, you're in agony, you're not doing anything productive about it. You should go out instead and like apologize or own it or whatever it is. But that second arrow is the most sort of destructive form, I think, of the relationship, because it's just not constructive. And so it's something that I think my closest friends and I keep in touch of. It's like, don't shoot the second arrow. Don't do the second arrow. It's not the second arrow. And we give each other that sort of permission to ensure that we're checking in with ourselves on that. And that's been a huge game changer for me.
Yeah, it's even the language. Brene Brown's good at this, where it's just like, I'm stupid. It's like, you're not stupid. You did something that was stupid, but you're not stupid. It's the language and how we talk to ourselves. Is super important. So what advice, would you have, Shizu, for folks who feel like they're just on this constant hamster wheel, even, in their brains and their life of just feeling, again, I've got so much to do here. When I'm not doing it, I'm thinking about what I'm doing. Because that's a pretty exhausting way to live. And a lot of people struggle with how to get out of that state.
Yeah. For me, at least, and I only have like my personal experiences and what has worked for me, but very practically, I remember my biggest, I think, conflict with myself was probably when I wanted to leave Goldman, where it was a stable job, it was brand recognized, whatever, and everyone thought you were literally everybody, your parents, your sisters, everyone you thought you trust was like, you're crazy. And that really makes you doubt everything about you. And I think what happens though is that you realize you're in like you're in a little container of people that you know, people that like you think the only people that are in there. And I think the next best thing to do is actually just open up that community and meet other people that like totally are like a different ecosystem and echo chamber of conversations that you're in, or if it's a new job or a new industry or startups, just get involved with something else. And it's just say yes to the next best thing. It doesn't need to be this like huge 180, 360 change. It could just be like a 10-degree thing. Like go meet someone, go do this, say yes to something else, do a small internship. It's just doing small movements that makes you feel productive and also makes you feel like you're moving in the right direction.
So if I'm hearing you right, it's not that you're saying, again, not a doing please, but it's more of like doing what you want to be doing makes you feel more like a human being. Is that accurate? Yeah. Instead of like producing or productivity for other, because we're obviously all need to spend our time, doing something. And, I have this theory too, where it's like, listen, the thing I feel the best in at the end of the day is, did I contribute? Did I make somebody's life better? Did I have an impact? And did I use what I felt are my gifts to the world? That makes me feel like a human being. When you're doing these things that are just draining, task-oriented, at a job you hate, then you feel like you are like it's more like you're living your life on a transaction basis. That's just like all these things that you have to be doing. And in order to get a paycheck, in order to get X, in order to, whatever. But it's really finding the things that you enjoy and putting yourself in those positions to do those more often.
I agree. And also put boundaries, say no to the things that don't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that as a whole separate, conversation. But everybody, I mean, this is the thing. Everybody talks about boundaries. I feel like I'm great at boundaries. And again, people ask, how do you get good at boundaries? Start having them. Like, guys, how do you get good at rejection? Start getting rejected. You need to put yourself in positions where like, go ask, the restaurant if you can eat a meal there for free tonight. They're probably going to tell you no. But if you get used to hearing no,
I love that.
Yeah, it's not gonna impact you if you're avoiding the no, and then when it happens, it paralyzes you. The only way to get good, it's like, I want to be a good runner. Well, then you better start running. Yeah. Oh, I wanna make money. Well, you got to take steps to learn how to. I mean, it's just like it's not rocket science in a lot of ways. You just have to start doing the thing that you say that you want to do. There's no shortcut. There's no trick that the people who are good at these things. That you see that they're good at. It's through practice. It's through that continuation of putting themselves out there to be good at that thing that they say they want to be good at.
I agree. And be courageous.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Shizu. Where can people learn just a little bit more, about you, connect with you, even through the company? I know people can buy your products, but to let's just end with a little bit of that.
Yeah. You can find me at shizu@apothékary.co if you want to email me there. It's Apothékary with a K. My Instagram is Shizu Okusa, SHIZU OKUSA. And the company, Apothékary, is apothékary.co, or you can also find us on Instagram, Apothékary Co. But
I want to hear just pretty much about. Tell everybody a little bit more about the products and like what it is that you guys do and some of the feedback and your favorite products that you have.
Yeah, I also love that we didn't talk just about the business at all, which is kind of again, like we're more than our businesses, right? We are. Apothékary is Mother Nature's pharmacy. We're the world's first ever natural pharmacy that provides alternative Eastern herbal medicine as a replacement to sort of the over-the-counter supplements that you might see, like melatonin, laxatives, energy drinks, alcohol, coffee, literally everything when you go through CVS and Walgreens that is in like opaque bottles, non-transparent ingredients. And we do everything based on plant-based medicine or herbal medicine that has been rooted in over 5,000 years. And so really bringing that to the forefront of preventative healthcare in the U.S. Yeah.
Amazing. And what are some of your favorite products?
I think our new tincture is probably number one. It's called Take the Edge Off. It's a white wine alternative tincture. We also have Chill the F Out, which is kind of like people use it for like a Xanax replacement. Again, like that's a prescription, so you want to talk to your doctor. But a lot of our stuff, like Do Not Disturb, is a melatonin alternative. I kind of rotate with all of my herbs based on what I need for that day. And that's the special thing I think about herbs, is that there are so many herbs out in the world, and depending on what you need, there is like a prescribed and custom or personalized dosing plan that we can also provide from the pharmacy. So yeah, you can come find us.
And you mix it all in water, right?
Water, coffee, tea, sparkling water. We have a ton of recipes on our website, and we also do these weekly dosing one-on-one classes via Zoom. We have 200, 300 people that join them. They're all new people, new faces every week. So if you're interested in becoming an herb nerd, you can also come join those classes.
So great. Well, thanks so much for the time today, Shizu. It was wonderful to see you and to talk with you. And I'm so glad you're doing well. And I love when people are transitioning. I know it can be uncomfortable shedding, some parts of our skin, but I think it's just so exciting. It shows that we're alive and that we're living.
No, we're not doings, we're beings. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate you.
Thank you too. Yeah, awesome. Talk to you later, Shizu.
Okay, bye.